good morning. And as war rages, so the sun stays out. Well, it's not entirely out, but we could expect some today in Lewis, with a mild breeze and the temperature hitting 12, which is a degree warmer than yesterday, and not bad for this time of the year. Not bad at all. Where is my right hand for a Thursday morning? Andrew Sloane. Well, do you know something? He's abandoned me and gone off to uh, Europe. He's gone off holidaying, would you believe? He's in Spain. Now, we have sent a link to him. Excuse me if I adjust things. He's going to try and pick it up. Whether, in fact, it will work or not, I don't know. But if he pops up on the screen, then we shall get his usual sage advice. For the moment, you just have to put up with me. Ho, ho, ho. Well, am I in spicy form this morning? Yes, I am. I'm always in spicy form at this hour of the morning. There are always things that I wake up to and I read and they get my goat. And it's not always, I may say, hang on a minute. Lauren Delavie. Oh, yes, welcome. Welcome, my darling. You've actually said a thing that we can become friends on Facebook, I think, and I'm going to do that. So welcome, Lauren. And she says, welcome again this morning to me. She is a good follower, a good friend to Mirador, and we appreciate that because sometimes, well, almost always, we're a voice in the wilderness. Is we don't get much support from anybody except I remember the British Columbia Prime Minister in the 1950s and the 1960s, a remarkable man actually called W.A.C. Bennett. And every time he was sent back into Parliament with a thumping majority, he used to say, everybody loves me except the people. or everybody hates me except the people. I'm sorry, because he was always in for a welter of criticism and always went back in. So we're a bit like that. Lauren, we really do love you, darling, and I'm glad that you're here on the show, or at least listening to us for all of 5 minutes while I wax lyrical with some of my rubbish and nonsense. But you know, at times like this, it's people who speak rubbish and nonsense that sometimes get through to a kernel of truth. And one of the things that really has upset me is that I have said from the very start, and luckily, because all these programs are recorded and tucked away in an archive somewhere, I can go back and prove it, is I said way back in the American election that I was not at all satisfied with the candidate for the Democratic Party, Joe Biden, who actually won the election. I think he's part of the old school, which we could well do without when it comes to American politics. And I had a go at politics yesterday, both here and there, and almost everywhere in a democratic society. I didn't have a go at politics in the non-democratic societies because they're even worse. But it's bad enough with our system and the way that we actually utilize it to look after a small percentage of people. A small percentage of people in our society. So there you are. I lost my thread there, but I think you got the idea that I'm as feisty as ever, that Andrew is toasting his toes in Spain somewhere, sun, sand and sangria for breakfast. Can a man ask for anything more? I hope that he can pop up. I hope that he will pop up and tell us what it's like out there. But in the meantime, I think it's time for us to take a look at the newspaper headlines. They are, as one can expect, even worse than they were yesterday and than they were the day before. And more disapproval of President Putin is poured on his head. Barbaric, just awful, and so on. But, you know, the funny thing is that in the middle of the night I woke up and I thought, do you know, I really need to say this, and I just put out a one-line blog on Facebook, and I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something like, there is an abundance of evil when good men do nothing. And, you know, I keep on listening to us saying how barbaric the Russians are. And indeed, they are being so for a civilized people, because I know the Russians quite well. I've lived amongst them, I've worked with them, and I have maintained friendships with a lot of them. I know the Russians quite well. They are a nice people, in the main, a kind people. But like a lot of people, they've got the wrong leadership. Ha ha! Does that resonance here? But the idea of calling him barbaric and so on is not so much that he's not behaving in a barbaric manner. It's because really it is pot kettle. We sit on the sidelines. What have we done? Sweet bugger all. And what have the Americans done? Even less. According to the latest reports, that Joe Biden has told his armed forces, because like our Queen, he is the commander-in-chief of the American forces, he's told their soldiers, sailors, and airmen not to engage with the enemy. Well, that's a fat lot of good. You know, we don't seem to look ahead, or we don't seem to learn lessons from history. America is going to come out of this looking like a weak Nelly. And first of all, the Chinese and some of the rogue states are looking at America and saying, hey, listen, you show no leadership, you show no backbone, so get lost. And already, would you believe, there is a situation where, faced with the shortage of oil, because the embargoes on oil from Russia affect us more than they affect the Russians. Normally, when these sort of things happen, filled by Saudi Arabia. And Joe Biden has gone to the Saudis, whom he roundly criticizes for their way of life, the fact that they're a kingdom and they're non-democratic and they treat women not the way that we would treat women. And actually, there's some amelioration of that, because I've actually trained, had on my courses, ladies from Saudi, and they say that it's not anywhere near the way that we represented it. But that's another argument and another day. But Biden has gone to King Fahd, is it? Yes, no, and said, hey, listen, mate, we're all on the same side here. Will you release the taps? You've got more oil than anywhere else in the world. You can let us have a bit extra. And the king apparently refused to take his call. Oh, dearie, dearie me. I wonder why. Because, with all due respect, Biden, and not Americans, once again, we have to be very careful. There are some very, very lovely and generous Americans. Well, we work with them all the time. Very generous Americans. And so with Russians, and so with many other people. It's the leadership that gets us into this dreadful mess, or these dreadful messes that we get. And we do nothing about the leadership. Why? Because we are powerless to do so. The system makes sure that only the chosen few can run for office. And out of that chosen few, even then, the less chosen few manage to maintain it or get it or go there. Right, now you wonder why I get excited? Huh. Yeah, once again, I can't even remember why I started that particular rant. Oh, about the fact that the Saudis have told the Americans to get lost. And guess who is the peacemaker at the moment? Yes, it's our Boris, who is phoning the king and saying, look, kingship, look, Your Majesty. No, I'm not making fun. The fact of the matter is, people choose their own form of governance. And you can say, no, that's not true. You get armed forces, rebellions, and so on. Yes, you do. But generally speaking, those can only exist if they have some form of popular backing, or that they are so horrific that nobody wants to live there anyway. And that seems to be the question of the state of Russia at the moment. A lovely country with lovely people, with wonderful history, wonderful artistic background. Oh, the whole thing. And what are they doing? Is they're behaving, yes, like barbarians in Ukraine. Right, that is the rant. Now let's take a look at the newspaper headlines. The overall from the BBC is barbaric children's hospital bombing, a new low. Well, once again, I think that's emotive. Some of the things that were done by both sides in the Second World War, and most certainly in the First World War, were just as barbaric. But civilization managed to restore itself. It managed to get back to where it wanted to be. So, is this a new low? I don't think so. Not yet. What is obvious is that Putin, even though he's suffered reversals, is not going to give up. He is going to go after occupation and domination of Ukraine. And it is up to us to try and stop him. But with all due respect, all we've tried so far is words. And we see the propaganda that says the words are working, all the sanctions are in place, the Russian economy is creaking, and so on. I have no idea whether that's true. And neither does anybody else in the West, because it's happening on the ground. That sort of thing always does. So there's a lot of guesswork. The fact is that we have done nothing with the sword to try and stop what's happening in Ukraine. Oh, now here is a calming influence. Here is a calming influence. Wait for it. Wait for it. We talk about sun, sand, and sangria for breakfast. Take a look at this. And you're just going to rub our nose in it, aren't you, Andrew? Huh?
There we go. I don't know how good my internet connection's going to be.
It's good enough for us to understand you. We can hear you. You're just a little jerky in terms of your face. But then I got used to a jerky face from you, so carry on.
I think it's because I'm moving the camera so it's not still. Oh. Let me just do that. I can do that.
All right,
Okay.
We've got to make sure that you take a little tripod with you in future, I think. Yeah.
I think so. And a crew, yeah.
Okay, I've just had my lovely little rant. Everybody's pissed off with me now. I rather think they're going to be pissed off with you because although it's not a bad day here, where you're sitting, it looks as if it's absolutely great.
Yeah, it's slightly fresh, so it's not warm, but it's lovely to just be away,
Where are you?
I'm in Sitges, near Barcelona in Spain.
And what are you doing there, apart from just lazing about and making the rest of us either envious or thinking, how dare he?
Yeah, we're just come away for a few days. We've been here quite a few times over the years. It's a bit like, I always describe it, it's a bit like if Brighton North Lane was on the coast. That, so it's quite local, it's quite quiet, it's a bit quirky, just to come away.
A bit like Lewis.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, now,
At the beach. Yeah.
how long are you away? We got a little lag. I don't know whether you heard that. How long are you
just
away?
until Monday. So just a few days.
Oh, right, just
it's
a
one
short,
of the
a short hop away.
Oh. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's only the rich and the famous
4
can
days.
do. 4 days. Tell me, in the background, is that your yacht bobbing in the bay?
Yeah. Yeah, completely.
Oh, there, we've lost you. Never mind, I'm sure that you'll come back. There he is, lounging in Spain and having a marvellous time. one of the things I did want to ask Andrew is, sometimes we get terribly excited and excitable about things in this country, and we then find out that people aren't as excitable or care anywhere near as much about the same things over the same issue as we do. And I wonder if the people in Spain are reacting the same way that we are to what's happening in Ukraine. For that matter, people in the other parts of Europe. It's easy to make the basic assumption, but is it a fact? Okay, the Mirror, barbaric. The Metro, the Russians hit baby hospital. Now, indiscriminate shelling is that is, quote, criminal. There is much said about war crimes and that Putin should be hauled up in front of an international court. But this is a very, very difficult situation. Those of you who know me know that I spent almost 15 years in Ulster, in Northern Ireland. And therefore, having been on the ground, I find it appalling that a generation of people in Whitehall, in governance, decide to take to court for, quote, war crimes our soldiers on the ground. There were a lot of injustices on both sides. There was nastiness from 1969 to almost 1985, 86, lots of them. And suddenly to turn around and attack our soldiers who were under orders and dealing in a very stressful situation. A situation, if I may say so, once again, most of the people making the decisions never experienced. Well, I did, and I wasn't a soldier. In fact, I wasn't even really a frontline journalist. I was doing lots of stuff in the background. That doesn't mean to say that if you're actually in a war zone, you can always avoid being in the trenches. But the tension and the stress and the fear that goes with terrorism, and here's the word terror, is enormous. And what do? We actually take on our soldiers into court. So what are we doing? Double-edged sword. Let's take Putin for what he's doing. War is war. It is the thing to do is to stop the bloody war. What we should be doing is we should be standing up to this man with muscle, because actually the country under invasion has been united under a charismatic president, and the way it's gone, and it's actually winning some of the battles. When everybody thought there would matter, including Putin, that it would be days before they folded and the whole country was in the grip of the Russian Federation. Ha ha! Ha! Stranger things happen. But our lot didn't calculate that. First of all, they underestimated the leadership in the Ukraine. Well, that's easy. We're such poor leaders here. It's easy to underestimate other people. Your defence is that you try to pretend that you're better or that they're worse. And that's the nonsense of our society. But then what we do is we go after people with extremes and excesses. Yes, what's happening is horrific. It is horrible that they should hit children's hospitals. But it is not the first time in the world that this has happened, and it's not the first time in the world that we haven't undertaken or been the cause of some things like that. So let's not pretend to be better than goody-goody. Yeah, this man is doing horrific things, but it's our reaction that bothers me. It is not sensible, it is not sane. And if in fact we're going to make those sort of charges, if you like, in the middle of a war, God help us when the thing is over, and God help us if we became the losers. At one stage, some people were talking about that. Can we, I go to church. I would count myself as a Christian. I'm not a tub-thumping Christian. I don't ram it down other people's throats. That's what I believe, and that's good enough for me with anybody else. I don't care what they believe. But by the same token, I like to think that Christianity helps me bring at least an objective view to a lot of things. And actually, the big trouble with things like Russians hit the baby hospital, what a barbarian, emotive. There is a lot of emotion that spills out, not much objectivity. And surely that's what we should be aiming for. The rights, the wrongs, the yin, the yang, the left, the right, the up, the down. Surely we should be looking things at all sides and from all angles. But we live in a society, or we have lived in a society, where emotion plays a huge part. We get emotional about things. I get emotional about things. I'm the most emotional person on the face of the earth. But you'll be lucky to know that my finger isn't poised on the trigger, on any trigger. So with me getting emotional is fine. No, it's not. I feel a bit silly about it after the emotion was spilled over and spilled out of me. But I feel even sillier when I see some of the things that we have given way to. And I have to say that those people from government whom I belittle from time to time, who have appeared on mainstream television to give comment, have been reasonably calm and reasonably illogical. It's us lot that have become emotional. Right, okay, The Guardian. An atrocity. Russia bombs Ukraine's children's hospital. Yes, indeed. The Times. Aiming at mothers and babies. My guess is that they weren't aiming at them. My guess is that, like everywhere in this modern world, that the Russian army is just about as daft as any other army. And in fact, with some statements coming out of the captured soldiers, if they're not manufactured, if they're not fake, and I wouldn't put that past us for creating this thing, is what some of these Russian soldiers said is, we didn't even know this is where we were coming. And when we did find out, we were told that we were here to overthrow Nazi regimes. So there's all sorts of little bits of naughtiness going on. But I also suspect that the Russian army is about as incompetent as anywhere else. Having said that, our own army is not bad. It's one thing that we are very good at. And perhaps it's because of the old school discipline. Aha! Go and run around that football field. Why, sir? I'm not telling you why. Do it. Okay, sir. That's what a soldier needs to do, is shoot. And he shoots. If he pauses, he's not any help to his companions and to our or their army. That's what being a soldier is all about. But it makes you wonder about the competency of those people who were sent to war by Mr. Putin once they got across the border. And I have to say, is one of the stories that I always tell is friends of mine are the father, the head of the family, is a retired nuclear sub-commander, and a very, very gentle man he is too, and an absolute gentleman. And when he hosts you to a weekend at the Dacha, which he frequently did with me, they were wonderful weekends. Wonderful weekends. But he's a very early riser, as indeed I am. And secretly, I'll admit that we would down a vodka or two while playing Yahtzee before the rest of the people got up and had breakfast. But Yuri would say, somehow we were so incompetent, and so were the Americans. How we didn't start a nuclear war by bumping into each other, I'll never know. And so incompetence is widespread. So my guess is that somebody pointed the gun, pulled the trigger, the shell went, and it demolished a hospital. Horrific. Absolutely. But my guess is that the soldiers didn't actually deliberately target the hospital. Maybe I am wrong, but that's the beauty of democracy, isn't it? I can actually speculate, and then people can come and argue with me and say, Keith, you're naive. The thing is, it's amazing. I am quite a naive sort of chap. You can tell me all sorts of things. A baby cat born black will turn out to be white, and I believe it. But the fact of the matter is, I do try to express opinions based on my own personal experience, research, and my knowledge of the people that we're talking about. So I can well believe that they didn't aim at the hospital, that what it was incompetence, recognised by members of their own armed forces. And I'm not actually going to identify Yuri, just in case he gets into trouble, because whether you believe it or not, our reach for Mirador television around the world is quite extraordinary. It's not huge, but it is extraordinary in the areas that it reaches and the people that it reaches. So things get back, particularly since I have worked quite closely with journalists at Russia Today television. So yes, these things do get back. So I'm not naming names. The Daily Mail, depraved. Let's be depraved. Once again, they all bombed, shot, shelled a children's hospital. This shelling should not be taking place. That's the point. But nobody actually looks at it that way anymore. It's there, so it's depraved if a shell hits the hospital. Yes, of course it is. Of course it is. But they shouldn't be shelling in the first place. If we got diplomats of any distinction whatsoever, and we no longer do have apparently, this should all be stopped before they came over the border. And once over the border, we should have brandished our own cutlass and stopped the Russians in their tracks, which is patently obvious that we could have done now, without invoking a Third World War. Incidentally, one of the things that I do go along with in condemnation is that it is rumour, and I have seen absolutely nothing to confirm this. So I'm only going on what I read in the newspapers and what I hear on television and what I get from talking to people who know. And that is that he's thinking of using chemical weapons. And that would be a travesty in itself. Then I think we could actually use the word depraved, barbaric. And I hope that doesn't come to pass anymore. That he's already used some nuclear weapons, but not the bomb. We'd all know about it if he had. Those are the sort of things that we hope will not take place. Right, Putin bombs children's hospital, says the Daily Express, the ultimate in depravity. Yeah, let's paint the picture of this evil man. The Sun, Putin plumbs new depths, evil upon evil. The Financial Times, Zelensky accuses Russians of hospital atrocity in a plea for world assistance. Well, he's been beating his gums, hasn't he? He's appealed for world assistance, and we have actually applied sanctions. But nobody has bothered to pick up a rifle and go and help him, despite the fact that he made a fantastic speech to the House of Commons. As I said the other day, he's a former comedian. In fact, he acted in a movie, a comedy movie made about the Russian presidency. And here he is, the president of Ukraine, and turning out to be a cracker. Charismatic, a leader, understands what's going on. Model, I would hope, for the rest of us when all this nonsense is over. But anyway, he's making a plea for world assistance, and it's falling on cloth ears. We're much more interested in having a focal point of barbaric. Barbaric. What's the other word they're using? They like evil. Oh yeah, that's always a good one. Yeah, depravity. Yes. Well, let's go on with them. But we are doing nothing. And that phrase that I used on a little blog in the middle of the night keeps coming back to haunt me. Evil, it's not the exact quote, evil flourishes when good men do nothing. And I once again will have to paraphrase, but there is that marvellous quote that is often trotted out, but doesn't seem to actually have landed on anybody's desk who said, yes, we've got to act on it, is when talking about 1930s Germany under Hitler. First, they came for the communists, and I said nothing. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I said nothing. And then they came for the academics, and I said nothing. And then they came for the Jews, and I said nothing. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to say anything. War brings funny situations. It really does. And I think that if I'm saying anything this morning that makes any sense is, can we just take a look at ourselves, at our emotional response? Yes, let's be emotional. Nothing against being emotional. But let's also try to dissect what we are saying in emotion, what we are doing outside emotion, and what needs doing in the practical sense. I suggest to you that emotion is the only one of those feelings, if you like, only one of those things that is gripping us at the moment. The Daily Telegraph, Russia plotting a chemical attack. Now that's the one that really bothers me, is if in fact the Daily Telegraph has got it right. Where their information came from, I have no idea. But if they've got it right, that is scary. Chemical warfare has been banned almost everywhere. But if in fact the Russians are going to indulge in chemical warfare, that's terrible. Lauren has been away and she's come back. Thank you, Lauren, for being with us. It's lovely. We do have some interesting people who log in during the morning. Now let's see what the Daily Star is. Do you really think that's wise, sir? And once again, is there actually invoking Dad's Army for their headline, in which says Arthur Wilson in a story about Russia cutting power to the Chernobyl nuclear reactor is, do you really think that's wise, sir? The paper says, by the move by Mad Vlad, which means the reactor, which melted down in 1986, cannot be cooled, making a terrifying leak. And it is a phrase from Dad's Army. What they're saying is, you're footling around with Chernobyl, you're footling around with nuclear power, and there are a number of reactors in Ukraine. Are you actually going to unleash fury? Are you going to unleash hellfire? There are so many issues here that we have to worry about. And worry I am, and I hope you are. But I hope that instead of being emotive and yelling and stamping our little feet, and like many of the ancient tribes in their war, is that they would make a lot of noise in the hope that it would frighten the enemy, because they didn't have much to back it up. We've got the ability to back it up. But when you've got people who really, whose, in my opinion, whose foreign policy, such as the President of the United States, Joe Biden, is not thought out, it's not strategic, it's very weak. When you've got Boris, who will have to fight certain people in his own government to be able to do anything, and that is being demonstrated in the number of refugees that we're accepting at the moment, although I think that is just us being the bureaucrats that we are. It's just we try to put into a system which will be very complicated, as we always do about absolutely everything, and that's something else that's got to change. But there's Boris, and then there is Macron pouncing around on the stage like a little popinjay, making himself look idiotic. If we've got that sort of leadership, if we've got that sort of people saying to Vladimir, boo, he's not only going to say boo back, but brandish a big stick. And we're all saying, we can't take on the big stick. I sound like a warmonger, and I'm not. I'm just saying that I think that our approach and reaction to this invasion, which we've known about for months and months and months. Everybody's making it sound as if on Monday night we all went to bed thinking the world was great, and woke up on Tuesday morning to find that Russia had invaded. It wasn't like that at all. But I think that our reaction really should come under some sort of scrutiny, and that we should say to our politicians, please, on a lot of issues, start to look logically. Start to behave like leaders. And enough of this silly bureaucracy, enough of jamming your pockets, enough of the way that we actually, in theory, elect our parliament. Reform should be in the air. And if anything good comes out of this war, it should be that we look in our own backyard and say what needs clearing out, what is good that we should keep, what is bad that we should dump, and what sort of thinking should we apply if we really do want to change it. Oh dear, Keith, that sounded great. It didn't sound great at all. It sounded as emotional as I've just been complaining about. But I always like, before we go, I'm going to let us have our usual little wander through Grange Park, because it is lovely. Well, it's 22, a little after 22 minutes to 9 o'clock on the 10th of March 2022. Another day of war in Ukraine, another day of unsettled environments, economically, socially, and militarily, for the rest of the world. The further that you are away from these atrocities, if you want to use the word atrocity, from the military action, the less excited you get about it. And at the moment, we're feeling quite distanced. So it's easy for us to put on the woad and dance up and down and try to make believe that we've got huge resources behind us to handle this thing. Well, maybe we have. But you know, the resolve of the British people have not been put to the test yet. We've been able to shout and scream and yell and do all sorts of things that we think is going to unsettle Vladimir Putin and his army and his military chiefs. But we don't know that if things really get down to the basics, if we had to have rationing again, if we had to utilize convoys to bring in food, how we'd react. I can almost guarantee we wouldn't be dancing up and down on the cliffs, shouting barbarian at the man that started it all. I think there would be a lot of soul searching and tearing apart. It'd be interesting to see how we would actually react to the situation. Would we be as we were in the 1930s, the 1940s? That we would unite against what we saw as evil? Who knows? That's the nice thing, is I've got it even better than you. I can sit here and say what the hell I like. I can take any position. I can make myself look as if I'm very sage and know what I'm talking about, which half the time I don't. But what I do, and I think, hopefully, according to those people who are fans, if you like, of this program, and other people in the street and people that know me, is at least I get people angry. I get people argumentative. I get people yay or nay. As we've always said about Mirador, it's like Marmite. Hate it or love it, but you never forget it. And I hope that that's the case, because if people in the pubs today start to say, did you hear what Hayes said this morning, the prat? I'm doing my job. Thank you. I think it's time for us to go. I don't think we're going to get Andrew back, but it was nice to see him with his sunglasses on. One of the things that we do know now is when we start to bring in people from abroad, which we're going to in the not too distant future, that what we'll do is we will have to improve the technology, and that we are setting about. Our aim is to bring you a new idea, new thoughts, a new set of programs in the middle of April. And we're working hard on that, and we're finding out the things that we have to address. Okie dokie dokie dokie. Let us say good morning, goodbye, let us hope that the barbarian does not perform any more atrocities, like releasing chemical war, releasing nuclear war, bombing hospitals, targeting children, and the other things for which he is being accused. I say accused because some things are patently obvious he's doing, and others are born of emotion. Somebody just wants to blame somebody else for things that are going on. Let's get to the truth of the matter. Yeah, let's. All right, toodle pip.